to our work session for the month of September. Ms. Kinzer, I'll pass it over to you for the roll call.
Ms. Parker. Here. Ms. Kinzer's here. Mr. Harlan. Here. Mr. Fulbright.
Here.
Mr. Moore. Here. Ms. Irvin. Mr. Sims. Here. Mr. Hooper.
Here.
Mr. Howell.
Here.
Mr. Lindsay. We have 2 absent, and that's it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mr. Fulbright.
Yes.
Can I just thank Heritage for the calendars that you all got, that they used our art students' artwork.
Most definitely.
And I just wanted you all to have a copy of it. And I would like for you to know that Kristen Parker's son is one of those artists.
Oh, cool. Picasso Parker, huh?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you for bringing that up. And if anybody out there would like to see one of these calendars, we'd love to show them off after the meeting. Or go by Heritage, open you in a well, I'm not going to say that. Pick you up a calendar. We have, you see the items there under consent. We're going to just move on over those. New business, finance. Mr. Laconin, good evening.
Good evening, board members. We have 26 budget amendments. That's a lot. We have 2 deeper into the agenda. So if we have questions over these, if you want to pull some of them out and ask questions.
I do want to just ask, weren't there a couple added this afternoon by request that I approved?
The last 2 on there are, the last 2 at the bottom, they were added after we talked to you. They were special education grant funds that were approved by the state yesterday, so that was the reason why we added them last minute.
Is that number 24 and 23?
They should be.
Or is that further on in the back?
They are number 28 and 29. They are the ARP funding for IDEA, which is special education for the district.
Free money.
Wait a minute.
3.1.1.26, budget amendment 11029, and 3.1.1.25, budget amendment 11028. Those are the new ones that were added today,
Okay.
and this is free money.
Okay. I'm not going to worry too much about it. It's just not on the paper copy that I've got. Or at least I can't find it, one or the other.
Okay.
All right. Any questions regarding any of the budget amendments? Do we need to pull any out? Entertain some suggestions? Consent agenda for all 24?
26.
Is there any discussion?
26.
Somebody tell me something.
Yes. Some of them were coming out of fund balance. Will you discuss those?
Yes, ma'am. So some of these are pulling money out of fund balance for projects that were not completed last year. We have those on here. We also pulled in the Safe Schools budget. That pertains to the Safe Schools grant. I'll just go one by one. Would you like for me to go one by one on all these?
I would say just the fund balance ones.
Okay.
Let me ask you, though, just for clarification of what you just said. It sounds like the things that are coming out of fund balance this time were budgeted in the prior year, just not spent in the prior year.
That's correct.
So
and
technically, they're budgeted items. They just, that money was tucked away till we could use it.
We just received it in the form of a surplus, and this is only capital items here.
Okay.
So we don't carry over year-to-year operational items because that's money we allocated as part of operation and should be completed in the year of operation.
Right, exactly. Okay.
So
So technically, this could have been money that, never mind, I'm not going to confuse it. Go ahead, please, Doug. Mr. Laconin.
Okay. We have the 10 teaching positions that you all approved in the special called. We just amended the budget for that. That is budget amendment 11011. 11011. What's our next one?
Okay.
Budget amendment 1111024. This is additional educational assistance and classroom coordinators that would help with 2 things. One, according to our SNS, which is supplement, not supplant methodology, which we turn into the state each year, we have to have a certain number of educational assistants to meet our BEP requirements and receive those funds. We are under that amount, so we need to hire educational assistants. We will get growth money in January to support these But in the meantime, we have to take it from fund balance because we have to hire them now.
Okay.
The second thing is the classroom coordinators on that same budget amendment. And those would be to work with a service provider that Mr. Gaines is presenting later on in this meeting for a virtual teacher. We have a shortage on teachers. Do you want to explain that a little further, Mr. Gaines?
I'm happy to. Good evening. As you know, we have a shortage of content area teachers at Central, so we have contracted with Elevate K-12. They provide content area teachers. They provide them live stream instructors. The only issue is we have to have a person in the classroom to facilitate the roll taking, enter grades in our grade system. The virtual teacher will take care of the content. They will grade the assessments. You just have to have a person to do that part of it, to be in the classroom actually with the students. So, and we put the job position on the board. It's of the same tune of an educational assistant, but we called it a classroom coordinator. Back to what Doug was saying about our supplement, not supplant methodology. When we have instructional positions, we have to make sure that we're providing them equitably. So we came up with this classroom coordinator to say that we're providing in lieu of the teacher that's at this place. So we're trying not to create an inequity. It's actually taking the place of that teacher paired with this virtual teacher. Hopefully it'd be it may be something that may go on for some time. I don't know. I mean, that's where it is so far as our content area teachers trying to hire qualified content area teachers. So that's a solution we're looking for. We hope that will be a short-term solution, but it could be a potential solution that we will be using in the future.
Okay.
So, continuing on.
Hang on one second.
Okay.
Are there any questions regarding that one?
That's it further down in the agenda, so if we vote for the budget amendment, does that mean we're voting for it at this point?
The purchase is completely separate, so, but yeah, you would need the budget amendment to move forward with it, so they are paired together as far as action.
Okay.
They are paired together. Yeah.
Is with the Elevate item. The budget amendment for the actual Elevate software is with its item. The staffing positions is just over here because it was merged with the 12 EAs. That's how it was presented to us.
If they don't get the class coordinators, then it's null and void, because you have to have a chaperone for that class, even with the service.
Ms. Parker?
I was just gonna say, as far as some of the other ones for consent, I just don't know that I'm ready to put that one under consent yet.
Okay, and that's number 11024.
That's
Am I,
correct.
are we still on our same, okay. We'll take that
That's
one.
correct.
I would just ask that
Separate?
it be put with the Elevate, if it goes with the Elevate stuff. If they go hand in hand, I think we should put those together.
I think that one had two things going on it. So there is one with Elevate. The actual funding for Elevate is there. This one was merged with the EA's position. Like anything that was position related was put together to us, so we presented it together. But I feel like I guess this could have been two separate budget amendments. But we presented it with the EAs, so that's why we put it all together. But there is another amendment with Elevate for the Elevate funding side. So we can, I guess, put both of these there, but I guess if you all want to approve a portion of it, I would have to split it, and bring it differently to the full board meeting.
For my
Because
purposes,
the EAs are blended in there too.
I would prefer for it to be split, because I think
Okay.
we're talking about different things here. When you're talking about EAs,
Yeah.
that's
Part of the
separate
supplant,
from
yeah.
a classroom coordinator that's needed for that program. And if we're gonna be getting growth funding for the EAs, then the money that we're taking out of fund balance, then we'll have covered to put back in, and we can keep that clear in our mind. But the classroom coordinator, I assume, is not gonna be covered by a growth funding from the state. So that is just straight out taking it out of fund balance, and I think we need to be very clear about that part of it.
So I think we could, like you said, we can just pull it out and put it with the Elevate, and then depending on what gets approved, I may have to split it up based off of what gets approved, the number of positions that get approved today.
Sounds good.
There was one earlier on, is there any other questions? Sorry.
No, I think that covers all that.
Okay. Budget Amendment 11002, that's one, that we did not go over, that does touch fund balance. This is the laptop fees that are collected, so you can see the revenue in there and also an additional expense. That expense line item that the revenue is helping offset with fund balance, that is to actually fix the devices. That's the service line item that tech uses. So they're taking the revenue that they've collected and using it to fix the laptops, which is what it's meant to do. The last one I had was just open POs from last year that were already budgeted for and taking it back out of fund balance this year, like I said, specifically for capital purchases only.
Okay. Any other questions or? So it sounds like just from our discussion, everything's good to go on consent except for 11024, which it sounds like could be brought back at the full board meeting in two separate budget amendments.
Correct.
Is that the board's feeling on this? Okay, then that's the way we'll proceed. All right, great. Anything you'd like to share with the monthly financials for August and July sales tax report?
It's very early. I have good news that sales tax has been exceeding last year's projections, so that's good news, especially the way that we budgeted it. Good news further is that we were able to add to our fund balance, and even the projects that were proposed last meeting and approved and made it through commission, even with those projects and the level of spending that we're going to be at, it does look like we're not going to have to do a tax anticipation note this year, which is really good. So
that's
stellar.
That's quite a step. Thank you.
Stellar. So, Mr. Lindsay has
Yes,
light on.
Mr. Lindsay.
The tax anticipation note, would we not just be safe to do it anyways, or?
So, yes, but when you do a tax anticipation note, you have to fill out a cash flow statement to the state to prove that you need one, and I couldn't do it. It didn't meet it, so the state would turn it back if I sent it to them.
Wow, well, that's a good problem to have. Any other comments regarding financials or tax? All right, differentiated pay.
That was asked to be put under us by the board, so
Okay.
I'm ready to hear what it is.
We have someone who's requested to have this on?
I asked for us to have a discussion about
Okay.
differentiated pay, but I don't know that I necessarily thought it would be for Doug to discuss. I assumed that our superintendent was gonna show what he wanted to do with
it
that.
ended up under Doug's purview, so that's why I referred to it to Mr. McConan. I don't think Mr. Hickman
Yes, we put it on
did
there
that.
and spoke with Doug about this, and they said this has to go under the financials since it might mean increase in any of the budget items. So I am, matter of fact, I was about to hit the microphone
Go ahead,
button.
and I'll turn it over to you then to have,
Okay.
start the discussion.
Well, it was brought to me by the board on some of our hard to fill positions was, what are we doing, what actions are we taking? And one of the steps that we are allowed to take is look at differentiated pay. And differentiated pay was brought to the state and passed just for the point of, the main point, not the only point, for those hard to fill positions. One of the things that we're finding though right now across the state, obviously, is the number one need across high schools, period, is the math positions. The math positions, when I was at the superintendent conference, it is just, it's dry. The well is very dry out there, and that's why a lot of districts, not just us, have gone to programs like Elevate, which I think that kind of makes it worse because now you can tell these math teachers, hey, you want to work from home and get the same kind of money. So we're really, it's a need we have to look at. But looking at differentiated pay is another thing that some districts do. Some districts, when I've talked to some, they said they don't necessarily think it's bringing in them in droves, but they think it does help. One of the things one superintendent told me, he said it really just comes back down to just pay, period.
So differentiated pay was put on here for something for us to discuss, and I'll just open it up to you guys if you have any questions for me or any discussion you would like to talk about this.
Ms. Parker?
I think it would be helpful for everybody to know what we actually do right now when it comes to differentiated pay, because right now, I think when we're talking about it, I know for as long as I've been on the board, I don't remember us approving a differentiated pay plan except maybe one time, and that was a long time ago. When we had emails back and forth with Mr. Hickman, he mentioned, I think, PBL teachers, PLC teachers, STEM teachers. Based on conversations I've had with him, he has indicated that, like, he wasn't looking for all of our schools to be STEM designated. So if we're not moving in that direction, then why are we going to assign extra pay for STEM teachers? And I'm really looking for direction from him as to, like, what exactly this money could be used for to actually move our system forward. If what we're currently doing is effective for the teachers that we have and is filling the needs that we have, then I'm happy to keep things as they are. But based on the needs that we have in the district currently, I don't think that it is actually serving the purpose at this time. And I would be open to any suggestions he has to change that. But I think we need more information before we can really do anything or take any kind of action on this, is my opinion.
You know, looking at the differentiated pay, I would love to try to give it a try, and I think, you know, right now, some of those positions that you did name, we do pay them via stipend because it's considered an extra duty. They have to do extra work after school, things like that. But with that said, you know, my suggestion is let's wait and see what this just lost it. Our pay, no, sorry. The study that we're about to do, let's see what it renders, and then we can see, you know, after, if the board chooses, hey, we're gonna bump up our salaries, then we can, or not, we can say which way we need to go with differentiated pay. I do think it is an option moving forward that we do need to consider, regardless of what the pay is, because, you know, we've got to do whatever we can to start trying to attract these positions, because it is not just a Murray County thing, it is across the state, and it's gonna get ultra competitive trying to bring these folks in. Unfortunately, what we're seeing with hard-to-fill positions, and most people from the state will tell you the same thing, is most of your high school positions now are becoming hard-to-fill positions. The best example I can give you is, you know, 10 years ago, we'd put out a high school English position, and you would get just dozens of applicants. But now, and this is from what I'm being told, is with the rise of social media influencers, tech gurus that have their own kind of newsletters, newspapers, that a lot of folks that are going through that major are really getting sucked into that employment. So, you know, I'll circle back around. I really think before we start talking about a number, I'd really want to wait and see what the board chooses to do after the pay study.
Mr. Laconin?
Whatever y'all decide, we're happy to carry it out through payroll.
Thank you for your willingness. Any other discussion on this at this point? This sounds like the conversation that'll come back up per your recommendation following the salary study then. Ms. Parker? Mr. Lindsey?
As you said, Mr. Chairman, it sounds like this will come back up, but when it comes back up, could we get like an overall view of what our differentiated pay plan is now, what positions we're paying, what those stipends are, total monies we're talking about, just so that everybody's on the same page.
Okay, thank you. Mr. I don't care. Moore, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm thinking of this more from just as an employer side of this. I know you said that districts have kind of said that works or doesn't work. I'm not sure about that. It's really a confusing answer to me, because it seems to me, because what I keep hearing in this seat is that pay is everything, and if you're really looking at offering a differentiated pay that's going to bump that up, that seems like that would be an important thing for people that are in those hard-to-fill positions. And then it seems like on the district side, what I would do if it were my employees is I would be looking at what, if that higher pay is now bringing in additional employees, that seems like our own salary study that would then tell me I need to bump up the pay for those positions. So not only would I like to know kind of what Mr. Lindsay had asked was, what are we doing now in those areas? If you guys could really kind of look into what could we do, or what are our options? I know there are some requirements from the state that kind of limit some of the things we can do. Can you guys look into that and maybe find some districts that are doing some of these things? I know, when we talked about the salary study is not going to be until this year's done. If that's the discussion, then this is in no way going to impact this school year, is my assumption. So now we're talking about potentially putting something in place for the 22-23. Good grief, that sounds like a long way off. And that's what concerns me. I was really looking at, are there any options to try to get teachers into the classroom now? That's kind of what I was hoping for, and I think that's what Ms. Parker may have been kind of looking at, rather than a long-term discussion about that.
And I guess to answer, it's mixed reviews. It's mixed reviews who I've talked to. Some folks feel like, yeah, differentiated pay has brought in some folks for us, and some said, nah, not really, because I was asking that question at the superintendent's conference for folks, and it was just mixed reviews who you asked. I know Moore County, I've been talking to him a lot, and because they do offer it for those pays, and he said it just depends what year. Some years he feels like it does draw in some it doesn't. Like this year he just didn't feel like it did, because most people are doing what we're doing, is looking for, there's just not that certification out there. It's hard to find anyway, because they're very limited of how many teachers are coming out of the teacher college with it. And so, but we can try to get more studies, see if there is some studies to back if it's working or not, and try to present that as well. And, moving forward, if the board feels like, and like I said, if the board feels like that's something it wants to move forward with right now, it'll be a budget amendment fund balance request, we can absolutely give it a shot.
Well, I guess that I'm looking that we have a major issue with shortages of teachers, and I'm just looking at, again, were this my company, because that's what I do, is I'm going to be looking at what are all the options I can to get somebody in there, because I don't get to just sit back and say, well, I don't have an employee. Oh well, I'm going to adjust my pay. I'm going to adjust benefits. I'm going to look at other options to try to get somebody in there if I need somebody in there. And again, these kids need somebody in those classrooms, in those positions. So I just think I would like to see you guys really look into what other options, and I don't think differentiated pay is the only one. I think, as far as I'm concerned, it's kind of a emergency situation where we should be looking at almost any option to get people in there. And I do appreciate the one, I'm not sure I'm a fan of it, of the blended, where you've got a remote teacher and then you've got someone kind of sitting in on the classroom. I do applaud you guys for at least looking at options. I appreciate that, but I would like to see some more, and again, I think that's why Ms. Parker had asked for the differentiated pay, is that's one of the ones that seems to me, again, I keep hearing that pay is the issue here, and if that's the issue and we can pay more and to get someone in the teaching position there, then we should be.
Okay, and I think that, when I spoke earlier, I in no way intended for this conversation not to be had again until after the salary study. I anticipate this to be on our work session every month till we get it solved. Ms. Parker?
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Chair Fulbright, because that's really kind of where I am. I really don't want to wait for a salary study, because I still feel like this is problem solution, and this was just one potential solution. If this is not the solution that you think is best for it, I am certainly willing to listen to other options, but I just don't recall us really having any discussions last year about differentiated pay and what we wanted to use it for and things like that. And so if we're locked in for this year and we got to use it on what was decided on before, that's fine. But if we have some flexibility on that, then I feel like we should consider, addressing the needs that we have in the system that exists right now. And, if our most pressing need is getting hard to fill positions in here, then I think we should look at that as an option. I'd just like to see this stay on here and at least continue to have some discussions, not necessarily about differentiated pay, but the shortage of teachers and what we're doing to address that issue.
Thank you. Mr. Howe?
So just thinking about this, looking at this from a purely business perspective, for differentiated pay to be effective, since supply is at zero or there's minimal increase, in order for it to be effective, we've got to have an amazing differentiated pay, or it's just something we say, hey guys, by the way, when we're looking at prospective candidates, we offer differentiated pay. But if it's $2,000 extra for a math teacher versus Rutherford County or Williamson County or wherever, if they're offering $8,000, we're just offering it to offer. It's not effective. I mean, why would we do that? So unless we're looking at the holistic picture of where we want to draw these candidates away from, then we've got to not say, you know, our math teacher starts at, I'm making a number up here, at 43,000, but right up the road at any direction, any county, if they're offering, you know, 48,000, then if it's pure money, they're not coming to us. They're going to go there. So we offer it, okay, but now what? If it's not effective, it's not effective. It's got to beat someone else's offer. So keep that in mind when we're looking at this. It's got to be really, really good. And then now we've pissed off the other teachers that we can't keep or are trying to keep. And so it's just kind of a domino effect. Now it's hard to find teachers. Okay, well, they're all hard to find. They're all valuable commodities. So, you know, doing something right now sounds really good and sounds great. It's doing something to be doing something. But genuinely, until we get a salary study, we're not really going to make any headway on differentiated pay. It doesn't make sense to just throw that money out there and say, hey, when it's not, you're just casting a net and hoping for the best. And so to use the data, I think, that we get from a salary study makes way more sense than just throwing it out there.
Okay, thank you.
One last thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Again, the reason why I brought this up is because really the question is, what are we using our differentiated pay for? That is the ultimate question. I'm glad Mr. Lindsay put it much more succinctly than I did to make it clear what exactly I'm looking for. But at the end of the day, why are we paying teachers under a plan that wasn't under this administration? That's my ultimate question, because I don't think that's what Mr. Hickman thinks is moving us forward. So I'm just asking him to come up with his own plan for differentiated pay that's going to move our system forward. I'm not saying that those teachers that are currently getting stipends under differentiated pay are not valuable. I certainly think that they are, but I'm saying if that doesn't fit with the plan that he wants, then we don't need to be under this plan. So that's what I want us to look at, and I don't think this should be board-driven. I think this should be administratively driven.
Well, and I'm going to put a cap on it because I'm hearing two separate ends of the scale, and I think we've got a middle ground right here. We're not going to be making any quick decisions, but we can take steps now to reach an effective decision. And I think that's where, you know, Chad, your frustration, and Ms. Parker, your frustration, what I would like to see by next work session is exactly what's been asked of what we're doing now, what we're doing with that pay, however you want to phrase it or work it, and then also to just like you're doing now, keep surveying other districts and say what's working and what's not, and have some real, I mean, I don't know if you want to don't bring a chart, but just bring some numbers of what's working and what's not, just so we can start to have that informed discussion that then can inform us as we look at a salary study down the road. Does that summarize kind of what the board discussion is? Because that puts everything right there back on central office. All right. With that topic coming back up next month, let's move on. Mr. Gaines.
I'd like to take the opportunity, first of all, to introduce some new employees. First, from at our school level, Ms. Jo Schmidt is now the new principal at Battle Creek Elementary School. And Ms. Shari Riley took her place. She was the assistant principal at Spring Hill Elementary and moved to Battle Creek, and Shari Riley took her place. So she's now the new assistant principal Laura Duncan, I don't know if you met, did we meet you last time? Laura Duncan was at Battle Creek Elementary. She is now our elementary coordinator. Welcome. And we also have our high school coordinator on board now, Miss Kendra Chapman. So thank you very much. We're ready to move on.
I'll be honest, I did wonder why there were so many new faces I didn't recognize here. I'm glad you cleared that up.
Yeah.
All right, keep going, please.
The next item is just Northfield Academy needed to make a date change on their graduation. So that's just for your approval. You normally approve graduation dates early on. We have an ACT date that she wants to get in before that graduation date, so that's why she needed to change it.
Any discussion about that on the board? Mr. Moore?
Yeah, it's related but unrelated. It has nothing to do with that issue, but since Northfield's on here, I know at the most recent TSBA regional meeting, they had some discussions about the options that have been brought up that the state has allowed to expand virtual academy membership. I know they opened it up to ones who didn't have it. Have we looked into any of that, or are we offering it? I think we were capped originally at, 75 students in that program. Are we extending that, or have we kept it there?
Right now, we extended it to right at 100, and if, you know, one of the things we can look at is if we added more, teachers to the budget, we could put more over there to do that, but right now we're running it right at 100.
Okay, and you feel like you got it staffed appropriately for that. Are you seeing a high request to add those on?
Yes. Especially this year. What we're concerned about, though, one of my biggest concerns is how many of those folks, if we do build up that virtual academy, we build it up and then the next year everything goes back to normal, all of a sudden you see a migration back to the school. And what we do with our virtual school, and Ms. Lou Emma McWilliams, who's the principal of it, one of the things that we do is she is very, I don't want to use the word picky, but she makes sure that it's the right student. It's not just a student trying to get in so they don't have to go to school. And, you know, I really commend her on that, finding that right type of student, because I know I think she said she had almost 200 applications at the beginning of the school year, and she still sees applications come in.
Well, I would just say I've said this since we started this a year and a half ago. I would really like to see us make sure we do a concerted effort. I feel like this serves a piece of the student population that existed well before COVID got here, that there are kids that just aren't a good fit inside the school building, and they never have been. And I like that we're able to, as a county, offer some options to those students and those families. And I would love to see us, I know if she's doing a good job with that, I'd like to see us maybe have some discussions toward the end of next year about what that looks like, if the state's going to backtrack on any of those numbers, because I would like to see us have a very deliberate program there and do a good job at it.
Agreed.
And expand it as far as we're comfortable to expand it, to keep offering that to our residents.
Agreed.
Okay, is there any discussion on the graduation date, or can we move that to consent? Okay. Purchase of Remind Emergency Call-Out.
We currently have a messenger system called School Messenger. We're proposing to switch that to Remind, and I think Mr. Cobb's here. If you have questions about it, in the budget they are the same price what we budgeted. So, and Remind, according to Mr. Cobb and Mr. Seal, provides a better option for us. So that's why we're wanting to switch. But they are here for any questions.
Just out of curiosity, Mr. Cobb, what's the better option? You don't have to give me a whole long presentation, but just why would we make a switch, I guess, is my quick question.
Yeah, the switch to Remind is advantageous because Remind is more geared towards mobile texting and mobile app, and it also has the features that we're used to. You know, according to some of the stats, people 40% of the time let their phone calls go to their voicemail, and 99% of the time they read their text messages. So 90% of the time you can get a receipt of a text message or a reply. 33% of the time voicemails aren't even listened to. So this program offers all these features, and it's way more robust, and it's really more user-friendly. Not to mention the simple fact, and I'm not going to go through the whole presentation because you see I brought it with me. In the month of August, we had over 2 million usages of free of charge. So it's being been used for quite some time now. And because the district didn't actually have a license for it, it's just strictly between the parent and the student and the teacher. Now that the district will have a license, we'll be adding some features and being able to better control what's going on with Remind and monitor it.
Okay. And it's, you said it's the same price as what we're using now?
It wasn't, we started looking back this in May, and they definitely worked hard to get us into a price range that is compatible to what we had with School Messenger.
Ms. Irvin?
Mr. Cobb, does it also have a voice feature, like where you're physically gonna be calling, or is it simply gonna be text messaging
Yes.
and app-based?
Yes, ma'am, it has voice to or text to voice feature, and you can actually send a voice message. It's a little different than answering the call and hearing it right away. It's set as a WAV file, if you wanna say, so it is a similar feature, just a tad different.
So of course, you know, I use Remind and I love it, you know, it's great as far as interaction with the kids and the teachers, but I just wanna make sure there's still a population out there, I believe, that's not quite smartphone savvy. We have
Yeah.
some grandparents raising grandkids, and I wanna make sure that we're not keeping those in the dark. But you feel like this would still serve the purpose of a call out?
Absolutely,
But
this one enables voice calls, text messaging, apps, web. This one is more full-featured than what we currently have at the same cost.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cobb.
I believe we're good to put this on consent. My only other question is, will it still have your charming voice that calls me in the morning to tell me about snow?
Absolutely.
That's all I need to know.
All right.
Consent agenda. All right, out-of-state travel for Hampshire Unit School. Who's got this?
I can cover that. We asked the principal to be here for any questions. We tentatively approved that. We just wanted to let you know that it is out-of-state, travel for Hampshire Unit School. They are planning on going to, I think it's part of a grant that they have. One of the trips is to Maryland. We will monitor, you know, we'll have to monitor what's going on, of course, with COVID but we wanted to put that on there just to make you aware of that.
Okay. Any action? Do we even need to vote on that for consent or not? Okay. All right. Mr. Gaines, request RTI, ESSER clerk, or
So-
monitoring clerk.
As approved in ESSER 3.0, we requested an RTI coordinator, an ESSER monitor, and an ESSER clerk. We're anticipating that this will be approved, that the application will be approved in the coming month. What our intent is to be able to go ahead and approve. Once it's approved by the state and that funding is approved, that we would post those positions, and that's what we're seeking, so that we can go ahead and post those positions.
Consent. Okay. All right, educational assistants, classroom coordinators.
So this is the budget amendment that was moved. Now they changed it. We are asking for, like Mr. Lukonen said, to add 10 additional, 12 educational assistants and take the money from fund balance. We have some enrollment increases. We also, in looking at our supplement, not supplant, like Mr. Lukonen said, you had a copy of that in your board packet. It says that we would fund educational assistants at 1 per 100 in K-5. So very much so, we need to add some educational assistants. Primarily, there are some elementary schools that have increased enrollment, and then middle schools, we need to add some educational assistants. So, and now let me talk a little bit more about the classroom coordinators. As I said before, we didn't want to create a situation of inequity by, you know, the easy fix would have been just add educational assistants to Central. But they would be in the instruction line, and it might be looked at that we're creating an inequity. So we're trying to associate this classroom coordinator with this virtual teacher, and so it's kind of that solution so that we don't have that inequity, that this classroom coordinator is going with that virtual teacher. in the next, it will be the same pay scale as the educational assistant. They're just gonna be a classroom coordinator. They'll just have different duties, as you saw, primarily responsible for taking the role, managing the class. The virtual teacher will actually be teaching the class, teaching the content. That person would be there just to facilitate the class. So, and the Elevate company actually trains those employees. I do want to say that if we could, I know it's not on consent right now because it's not coming from fund balance. We do anticipate, because we haven't hired those positions, that the money that we're using actually to pay for Elevate, and some of those positions will come from the fact that we haven't hired those positions. We've been carrying those positions since the beginning of the school year.
Okay. Ms. Parker, go ahead.
First off, I appreciate the inequity discussion, but do you not think that having a virtual teacher for kids is creating a little bit of an inequity in our system as well?
It's going to provide a classroom teacher that teaches the content, and we're trying to just provide. We don't have that Algebra 1 teacher. They actually will provide us an Algebra 1 teacher. That teacher is just going to be virtual. But yeah, and it's a Tennessee certified teacher. They'll be the ones that'll be on record for the assessments and all those things like that. They're going to provide the instruction. We just have to facilitate putting the stuff in our system, so that the kids can get their grades and those things like that. That's what that classroom coordinator would be for. Yes, it's not the best, but we're trying to look at solutions to, our point is trying to have a content certified teacher, and that was the thing that when we looked at Elevate, that they would have a content certified teacher that's providing that instruction.
I appreciate that you're looking at these options. I just, I'm a little frustrated with where we are right now with Central, in general. So I'd really like to hear from their administration on if this is what they want to use going forward. I mean, they're the ones that are going to have to work with it. They're the ones that are going to have to, deal with the parents that are calling if there's issues with Elevate. So I just want to know how on board they are with it. Because you mentioned that, we have positions that we haven't filled. Are they still working to fill those positions? Are they still interviewing for those positions? So if we contract with this company, are we then setting it up to where they're going to have spent all this time interviewing for people to come in and teach Algebra 1, Algebra 2, whatnot, and then all of a sudden, are we with Elevate for a week, 2 weeks, a year? I mean, I can't really get a clear picture on how long this is going to last, and I think they're probably better equipped to answer those questions for us, in my opinion, right now.
Mr. Edie has been in on all the presentations with Elevate. Right now, we want to look at to the end of the semester. To answer your question, yes, we are still trying to hire people. We're trying to hire teachers. The issue is we continue to march toward the end of the semester, we're trying to get content instruction in those classrooms. Yes, will it feel like that, at the end of the semester that we might have a virtual teacher and then change to a regular teacher? Well, that's just our intent. We want to have that, and we want to be able, as best we can, to have all of those classroom teachers in place by the end of the semester. But the issue is now is we don't have one, and we're trying to provide some instruction for those students. We'll, at those times, if we pick up a content teacher, yes, we'll drop that virtual contract, we'll drop that teacher, and we'll continue to move on. If you look at the proposal that we have for Elevate, the contract is a range from a base of $6,000 all the way up to $342,000 for the whole year. We're not asking you to approve that amount right now, but we don't know where we'll be so far as if we have folks. We hope to end this contract in December, pay what's remaining, and move forward with regular classroom teachers. Is what we ideally hope to do. We hope that we'll have December graduates. We're working with universities. We're looking at people that are student teaching, seeing if we can go ahead and move them into the classroom. Some universities are willing to work with us to do that. Some of them aren't. So we're doing everything we can to try to get, to try to tag teachers into those classrooms. In addition, other options is, the state's allowed us to permit people who do have a BS degree. We're also looking at that, too. But as you know, when you're teaching content in high school, you really want a person that, if you want somebody teaching math, you want a math major or something. So we're really trying to, that's probably an easier thing to do in elementary or middle, because we know who those folks are. We're tagging them. We're going to make sure that they have extra mentoring, that we give them some more support, because we know they're permanent people and they haven't really gone to a teacher ed program. But in high school, it's the content. We really ideally want someone who's content certified, so that we can, who's endorsed in those areas, so that we can use them. So we will keep working to try to replace those positions as we move forward. We're not going to stop that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess the reason why I'm saying this is I spoke with somebody today that I think had talked to Mr. Edie, and I know he is still trying to hire teachers and whatnot, and I think he was under the impression that he hoped that he would be able to have teachers in place by after fall break, which would be the earliest that I think this would be coming to us. So that's why, for me, I wouldn't be comfortable with this being on consent, just because I feel like a lot can change between September 21st and our next meeting on this particular issue. I don't know that it's just for Central at this point, but it seems like that's where it's directed right now. So I think it would be helpful to know what they're doing and what their plans really are.
So then to take a look at it at our next full board meeting, which is October 12th. And we'll just move, not consent, but we'll see where we stand at that time. Mr. Moore. Ms. Irvin. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Gaines, two things I was just thinking while ever you were speaking. We had mentioned we were going to hire classroom coordinators. Was that in addition to the 12 educational assistants? I'm assuming yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, obviously, all of our goal is to get the most qualified person in there, but I can't help but think like an employee. Let's say we hire these classroom coordinators, and then we find well qualified. Will they then be dispensable, or would we be able to move those coordinators to? I know we always need good people, so I'm sure we'd find a spot for them. But I just want to make sure we're taking them into consideration too.
There are vacancies that exist now, so.
Yeah.
We would try to move so that person may not want that position, but we would try to transfer that person, if that happened, to an open position. Yes.
And my next question, it's probably a little too late because of movement and such, and I'm sure you guys have done this, but have we thoroughly searched through all of our licensed employees to see who may be qualified that's not serving in that role? Because I know, I guess that's a yes by the look on your faces. Because sometimes, having taught in the past, I know there's some areas that are more difficult than others, and again, that's what I'm thinking with a differentiated pay, if they were maybe going to get like $5,000 more a year to teach something more complicated. And I just wondered how maybe we could help with that, if there were incentives we could drive those people to those harder to fill.
To answer some of your question, we are, we've worked at Central and other schools, even if they want to offer the math teachers that exist there to teach another block. That means they would teach 4 blocks a day, but we would compensate them for that block that they are teaching. We're trying to do all of that. We do have one teacher that's actually doing that. They're actually teaching 4 blocks a day, so they picked up one of those Algebra 1 classes that we didn't have a teacher for. In his block where it would fit in the schedule. So we are trying to do that. We are looking at and all the time at other employees at Central that may have other certifications, asking them the same thing to say, would you be willing to, teach during your planning period and pick up that extra course so that we could, goal again is to have that teacher in there, and second, it'd be great, although that teacher may not be certified, they're teaching one out, but it's a central high school teacher. They already know the kids and they're there. So we're trying all of those solutions to try to fill those vacancies.
Thank you. All right, so we have our direction with this. Mr. Moore.
Sorry. Mr. Haynes, I appreciate the kind of explaining, and I think that was what, at least I was looking for in the beginning of this, was trying to have a very clear understanding of what all is being tried, because this almost looks like an emergency situation to me, as far as how we're handling this, and I'm a little concerned that we're just now getting that information, that I thought this would have been coming to us shortly after the school year started, and I guess that's where I'm hearing in your voice and how you're describing things, and I appreciate the explanation of these different things, but as a board, I feel like I want to see some clarity on how that works. The notes I had here was just, the timing still worries me about the coordinator position. By the time you train to get something in place, are we stopping looking? And you kind of answered that, is we're still going to continue to look for these positions. But what happens if we get someone in there? And I know, the concern I have is, let's just say we place one of these coordinators in with a virtual teacher. While we continue to look for someone to fill that position, we find a stellar math teacher. Then the concern I have is, how does this look to the kids? Now we're even though we're getting a better math teacher, we're going to potentially disrupt their classroom experience with yet another teacher partway through. I would like to hear more of how you guys are planning through how that looks. Those are the details that I don't know about anybody else, but that's what I'm looking for, is to kind of see what's the strategy here across all of these things and how do they tie together. I'm not necessarily opposed to this. I think, the concerns that I have too, again, once we hire somebody in, let's just say we were able to fill, out of these positions, we're able to fill half of them with actual teachers that would be in those positions, and then we're stuck with some 10-month classroom coordinators that we're paying for, that we may or may not be using or utilizing. So I guess what I'm looking at is, if you're looking at the job description, is maybe that needs to be an alternate function in the job description, that they may have to be somewhere else if that coordinator position doesn't need to be there. They may be turned into, I don't know, for example, we've talked about a full-time or a contracted substitute. Maybe that needs to be part of their job description as we look at that. I don't know. But these are the kind of things that I was kind of hoping that we would be discussing, and perhaps when we brought up differentiated pay, when Ms. Parker brought it up, maybe we should have broadened that a little bit to talk about just solutions for the staffing issues we have. Because really, I'm looking at all of that together. So can we have some better discussions at the next work session that kind of detail the hierarchy of these? Obviously, a substitute, just a warm body in the room, is at the bottom of the list. If that's all we can get, that's what we're going to get. And then what does it look like moving up from there? Where are our priorities, and then do we have a plan to move through those hierarchies? And how are we still continuing to do that, or do we drop those? I don't know. I just would like to see that laid out with some clarity, so I can feel like we have a solid plan in place.
Thank you. Do you want to address any of that, or do you want to just do the
I'm glad to bring it back, but just to tell you, you approved 20 positions in ESSER, and hopefully, if there are stellar teachers out there, we're going to capture them anyway. And our intent is to look at where we have those vacancies or potential retirements. We're already strategizing that, if we need to capture that teacher, we're going to capture that teacher, and then we're going to move them to another position once we get there. And if they are at Central helping out, making the class sizer, well, we need it right now because we need those classes to be smaller because we got a lot of content. So, or at any school, not just Central, but that's exactly what we want those 20 extra positions for, is to be able to, if there are teachers that come out in December and we don't necessarily have more money in the budget, we can capture those teachers, and we've got them for 2 years that we can strategize and put them in positions that are, general purpose positions that are funded, so that we can keep those people on staff.
Okay. Mr. Howell.
So you were able to get one teacher to pick up a math, so they don't have a planning period. How are we compensating them for that? Like what's...
So we use the same, we pay them, essentially it's $40. So they're $40 an hour. So we took the average teacher pay and kind of took the middle. So essentially that person for working that block will make $60 a day for taking that course, and then that's what they'll do. But the requirement is, in the contract, is that they do have to do their planning time after school. So essentially, they're doing their planning time after school.
Sure.
Okay.
I'll just be honest with you, I wouldn't do it for $60.
Yeah, I know.
I just, you know, I mean, I just, and I know we're doing that with a lot of classes. You know, we're having teachers cover, you know, other classes. You know, and I recognize that, and I hope that we can look at something like that, because that's just, I wouldn't do it.
We had a strategy session with other high school principals. We talked about that. I know one principal, he actually quoted that, you know, we need to pay about $6,000 to do it. But we were trying to think about operating within the funding we had to try to, you know, hopefully we can get to the goal of hiring people or hiring some December graduates and kind of resolve some of these. So hopefully those type things that we're doing will be less. That contract, as it says, it has an end on it. If we hire a teacher, his contract ends, because we want a person assigned to that class.
Okay. Thank you very much. You'll come back with us some more information. Moving on to zoning and facilities. Mr. Perriman, your time to shine.
Good evening. The first few things there are just our monthly reports that we provide for you. If you have any questions about those, please reach out to me or to Mr. Hall. We'll be happy to answer those. One thing to note, the budget amendment did clear County Commission last night that funds both the athletic and the maintenance monies that you approved last month. Starting next month, they drop those into the 141 account, not 177. So not everything has to come back through you guys like it does in 177, but starting next month, we will add a second report that will track those monies for athletics and maintenance, and that's just for transparency with you guys, and so you guys can see where that money goes over the course of the year. So we'll be adding that starting next month. I think we probably are going to pull our first PO off of that money tomorrow. So hopefully we'll be able to make you happy with the money that you've given us. The first thing of note there is 3.3.3 is a bid for structural repairs. If you remember a couple of months ago, we came to you with some emergency repair at Randolph Howell, where we had some pretty significant foundational issues that ran up the wall that showed up. We needed $100,000 to address those. We did pull that money from 177, and as we are beginning that work, we are finding additional settlements as that has occurred over the month between when it happened and when we can get it fixed. So we have brought this back with the GMP to ask you to increase that GMP. We've spoken with Hewlett Spencer to, I believe, Dave, what's the number on that? 122,000, and we would take that 22.6 out of those 141 monies that were approved last night. So there would be nothing else coming out of 177. It would come out of the money that you did approve last night, but that does cover the additional structural items. And again, the $100,000's already been approved. We just need approval to amend that GMP and to address this as well. Mr. Hall has pictures that he will be happy to share with you guys if you want to see what it is we're working towards.
Are there any questions? Mr. Kinzer?
You know, when this came up to use that money out of fund balance, and you said that we would know everything that was going to be, because it'd have to come to us for approval, but now it really won't?
If they put it in 141, unless it's over 25,000, it doesn't, by your rule, have to come back. Anything under 25,000 can be, posted and done, which does allow flexibility. If they had posted it in 177 or 189, then if I spend $1 out of one of those two funds, then it has to come to you. But in 141, it operationally works just like our normal budget, and they did place that in 141.
That was just assurances you gave us that we kind of know what was happening.
And that's why we're going to provide that report to you, is because my understanding that it would be dropped into something like a 177, but it doesn't, because it's just a fund balance budget amendment. So that's why we want to bring that to you, so that you do see what we're doing and keep you aware as we go along. So you'll be month to month with us as we go through this.
Okay. Any other discussion on this request itself? I know, I'm trying to see, Ms. Irvin, are you pushing your button or just, okay, no, go ahead. I was going to let you have the floor first.
And we put it in the 141. I remember Schifra being here. That was a kind of a spur of the moment thing, but that's where the fund balance went, so we kept it in that fund. If it is desirable, to transfer it, it would take some time and approval, but, we can do it. Yeah, we could move it, at the board meeting.
Okay, are
Up
we
to
good,
y'all.
just moving this to consent, or do we need to have more discussion on it at the full board meeting? Consent? All right, consent it is.
3.3.4, we did issue an RFP for, construction manager services that would begin January 1. As you know, our, contract with Hewlett Spencer does expire at the end of this fiscal year. We did have 5 firms reach out to us that we went through and studied their qualifications and their past, projects that they worked on. We did call some other districts that they had worked with, and we did bring back to you a recommendation of Hewlett Spencer to be approved for construction manager.
Okay, any further discussion? Mr. Moore?
Thank you. Eric, something we had talked about before, and I know this is, when I first came on the board is when we moved to this model, and I know, that was in, 2014? I'm losing track of time here. Prior to that, could you kind of go through how this was done, how these processes were done prior to when we brought on this model? Because there's some distinct differences with what, and just so I can clear, out of the 5 that you had, were any of the others able to do it in the methodology that Hewlett Spencer does, as far as being able to do a GMP, where they have some, so to speak, skin in the game in terms of the dollar figure?
Right. No, they were the only ones that would be an owner advocate that would bring back a GMP to you that they bring back a number, then they have ownership in that number at that point. If that number goes bad in the end, then there's ownership for them in what we do in there. One of the things we did prior to moving to this model, and we've been looking into how other districts still do this, so they do a design, bid, build, where they take on the front end, and this would be where we would go back to, say in the past, we go to the commission, and we get all of the funds that would require to do all of the planning for a building. This would require us to take about anywhere from 10 months to really go in, do all of the studies that you need to on your land, on your building, get everything ready. You basically have fire marshal approval on your plans, and you go out and hard bid that. When you hard bid that, a company is agreeing that we will take your plans and we're going to trust that your plans are right, and then we're going to build your building for what we say. With that hard bid, anything that comes back that's questionable during that process or doesn't work, that would require something to be done other than what was on the paper, becomes a change order. And then it has to come back to the client, in this case it would be us, to approve that. Generally they would have a cost associated with them. In our process in the past, all change orders came before you guys. So with our current setup, if we had a change order today, or let's say the day after a board meeting, there's a change order that's brought up by the builder, then the next voting meeting, it would either require a special called meeting or wait for the next month for you guys to do an approval. Now, we have talked to some districts that the board has made arrangements with staff to where they basically give staff the ability to make those change orders. But in Murray County in the past, and Jake, I'm going to defer to you on this, that was not how this was done in buildings in the past. All change orders did come before the board for approval.
I think one project you delegated that, and then you took it back. You didn't like the way that went, so, yeah.
So this process of the GMP offers flexibility because we can go ahead and start our planning when we get deep enough into the plan, and plans don't have to be complete, but we get deep enough to get pricing. What Hewlett Spencer has done with us in the past is they go out and they secure the folks that are going to do the work. Whereas we hard bid it and we have to take either the low bid or we have to justify why we're taking a different bid, they can go to different companies and on our behalf negotiate, possibly get a better price than we have, or we could have gotten in a bid, and throughout the process they manage that. If there's a change order that comes back, it comes back to them, and they manage that along with making sure that we're on board with what's happening, but they're working within that guaranteed maximum price. And if that skews outside of that guaranteed maximum price, again, there's ownership and liability in there for them, not just us as the district.
So on some of those other districts that are doing it in-house, and I know over the last few years we've obviously added quite a bit of capacity of being able to, between Dave and yourself and other staff members, to be able to do some of these things in-house. If I'm not mistaken, some of the counties that bring it all in-house are, one, considerably larger, I believe, or quite a bit larger. What kind of staff would you need to be able to do that? What kind of staff numbers? I would assume it would need quite a few more people in our, in your department
Right.
to do this.
So what you see are two types of districts really right now, and we are somewhere in the middle of them. We've done 4 major building projects in the last 6 years. So we are not slow to build. We're building right now at a pretty rapid pace, but you have districts who sporadically build buildings. They may not build a building but once every 20 years. Lewis County is building a new high school, may be the first new building. I wouldn't even say in how long, but it's been quite a while since they built a building. So those folks, when they do it, they typically would hire consultants and they'll just bid out in different ways. They may hire a construction manager, they may not. The larger counties, the ones around us, the Williamsons, the Rutherfords, the Wilsons, the Sumners, that are building at a pretty rapid pace, if they're doing it in-house, there's 2 ways. They can still hire a construction manager, which means that they do the bidding, the building of the project on the front end, they bid it, but then to oversee the actual development of the project, they hire someone who comes in who is not necessarily liable if it goes over budget, but they kind of oversee the day-to-day. They are the boots on the ground during the building, and then they hand it back over. In some counties, though, and in the ones that are doing it themselves completely in-house, what you find is through their technology department, they've built someone in that's basically an engineer that helps to engineer the system. They may work with an outside company to make sure everything is right, but they're laying out the schematics and helping with the design of how technology is going to run through the building. And if you take a county like Williamson, they have a lead plumber. They have leads within their maintenance that on a day-to-day basis may have a function within the maintenance world, but they're also specialized to where they come in and they're working very heavily on the design of things. And as they go through that project and they work with the architect, they're working as a staff hand in hand with that architect and with the subs that the architect uses to develop the plans. And so you see quite a bit of staff. Those counties also have multiple folks that would function in either a capacity like Mr. Hall, but then folks that would work under him. So while he would be overseeing the facilities and he would be kind of coordinating everything on your behalf, there would be maybe a construction manager who would be the on-site person who is dealing with the day-to-day and then coming back to him. So it is quite a bit of if we're getting into the pattern that we see ourselves getting into, and we're there. I mean, we've done 4 big projects in 6 years. We're in that pattern to where we would need to bring it in-house, have multiple people. The other thing would be if we run into a situation like we were at Battle Creek, where you had someone at Battle Creek Elementary and Battle Creek Middle are going at the same time. These other districts don't use just one person. They have a dedicated staff that's working both of those projects. So it is something that we could develop, but it is something that would take strategic planning on our behalf and then making sure that we communicate well with you guys so that when we say this is what we're doing and the funding element comes up, that this is why we're doing it beyond, hey, we just need another person in maintenance or in technology. This is actually a function they would be doing.
Let me interrupt you there. Let's take a breath. Mr. Laconin.
Additionally, just to answer your question, we would also take on more work in finance because we would get with Eric and get with the architects, engineers, if we were doing it in-house. We would build all of those bids and put them out to the public, publish them on websites and in papers, and try to get the best we could. And like Eric said early on, by law, we don't have necessarily as much negotiating power. If we get one initial bid, lowest and best is what we have to take. And under the Public Building Authority, companies that have bid on this particular service, they don't have to stop there.
Mr. Sims.
with the, 5 that have issued the services on the RFP for construction management, do they give price, percentages? What kind of, I mean, how do we know what Hewlett Spencer versus Cadell versus Epps is gonna charge, or charges or don't charge on certain things?
So as we vetted through them, first off, let me say some of these were out of state. And that's not necessarily a deal breaker, but someone that's in Kentucky or lower Alabama isn't necessarily who I feel we need to lean on to be on site and to helping you on a daily basis. And I understand they say, well, we can send someone up, but that is a consideration in our world, is who you working with and where they coming from and how they're gonna be. I'm not gonna name drop any companies, but we've been working with one significantly out of New York on some time management stuff, and it's just hard when they're that far away, to sometimes have people to see you face to face rather than to do that. So the other thing that we looked through, and I did not get into pricing because the methodologies that they used were pretty significantly different. One company was very small. They had not done K-12 work to the extent of ground up work. They had done some where we came in and we renovated something, or they didn't necessarily have the background that it looked to build a building. The others were more construction managers, and that's what I was mentioning to Mr. Moore, where we would build it, we would design it, we would bid it, and then they come in and they oversee us. One of these specifically had stepped in Williamson County when they had some sickness in their staff, and were shorthanded. One of these stepped in, and they said did a great job, but all they did was oversee the day-to-day. They didn't necessarily come in and negotiate on our behalf. They didn't have the options under that public building authority that Hewlett Spencer did. So price-wise, I think even if we priced what they do, it would be a different service. And in our price, what we see and what we've seen with Hewlett Spencer is we set a price on a building, and then they're really tasked with anything that they make beyond that is the earnings and the savings that they make us. Whereas these other companies, we would simply be hiring them to oversee the day-to-day of the building. So I didn't get into pricing because currently the way we've been building buildings and the way we planned on doing this one as we've started, it wasn't that we were going to take time and do all of the design on the front end for the obvious reasons Mr. Moore mentioned with the shortage of staff. So I didn't know that those companies necessarily offered the service that we were looking for in this situation. So I didn't price. I would just say I think if you price them, it would be very different services that we would be pricing.
One more thing. So, I got your email from, that I'd ask about the,
And I apologize. I've had it. It just busy today, and it got to you before.
So, I do agree that our infrastructure may not be there today, to start building a high school, or any school really, I guess, but, as we see in what we've paid Hewlett Spencer over the past few years, I think the money is there for us to take it in-house and still save money. Hewlett Spencer is not a not-for-profit company, and so they definitely are making money, and from the looks of it, a pretty decent amount. And so I'm not saying that I won't vote for this today, or, well, we're not voting today, next month. I still think there's value in taking it in-house. Something to be said about having that staff in our offices every single day to knock this stuff around. I mean, Hewlett Spencer is in our county a lot, but they're not here every single day. We would have that staff that we could look at things every day. That's all that they would be doing. Plus, I do think we could save a considerable amount of money.
Thank you. Just for clarification, did you say some of the larger counties still use outside help to do these
Some of
things?
them do. Williamson,
Okay.
one of these companies specifically had done work with them, and some of the others,
And the
Wilson.
county, how long does the county contract go with Hewlett Spencer? Do you have any idea, or is that separate from our?
That
side?
is separate from ours, I'm not sure.
So even if we were to have brought it in-house, there's a good chance Hewlett Spencer's still gonna be working with Murray County government, and then we're duplicating services at that point.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Lacone?
As far as I know, there's not a contract. The commission makes the choice,
Project to
on a
project?
project-by-project basis, yeah.
All right. Mr. Lindsay? Oh, were you done? Okay.
Mr. Wilbur, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, construction management services are considered a professional service as far as Tennessee state law goes.
That's right.
And with that being the case, you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, I think it's, actually illegal to base your choice of a professional service upon, what their fees are.
It can't be solely cost, that's right.
Thank you.
Mr. Hale?
So just looking, I mean, you know, in 2019, we did a substantial amount with Hewlett Spencer. In 2020, a little bit. 2021, we didn't do anything with Hewlett Spencer. You know, I guess I don't see a problem with Hewlett Spencer. They have completed every project we've asked them to do on time and under budget, and then give us money back from those projects. I grew up in Murray County. I remember when we built schools, and it always seemed like they ended up in the paper, how they were over budget, and how they weren't built well. I mean, Spring Hill High School, we spent a lot of money over the years correcting the problems at Spring Hill High School from 1992. So, I mean, I'm not an expert in building. I don't, when a change order comes, I'll listen to staff, but that's not what my expertise is. That's not, buildings is not something I know much of anything about. I can build a shed, but I can't build a school. So, I mean, looking at the money we spent over 3 years with Hewlett Spencer alone, $1.3 million over 3 years, looking at the project that they've done, seems like a minimal amount. So let's say we have a year or two where we don't build schools, and we built this capacity. You know, we've got these engineers on staff, we've got these construction managers on staff. 2021, we built nothing. We didn't do anything. So I know they're not just going to be sitting in an office doing nothing, but like they're not earning their paycheck. So I guess I have a problem with just building this large capacity when we're not building a school a year or 2 schools a year or anything like that. You know, we're lucky if we get the funds to build what we minimally need every 4 years. So I mean, as far as cost savings, I'm sure long term, 10 years from now, that might be taking this in-house might be something to do, but sticking with a company that has a proven track record, that has completed every project on time and under budget, that says a lot. We can't even hire teachers, and we're now we're going to task Mr. Perryman with hiring more staff, and we think teachers are competitive. We are it in Murray County as far as competition for teachers. I mean, we're with other counties. Construction is a whole different ballgame. I mean, we're lucky to have the staff we currently have. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to not go with an owner advocate like Hewlett Spencer.
Okay, thank you. And I've got, I guess, the last light. One thing I'll just point out, I do think Mr. Sims brings up some valid points that the cost could be absorbed in-house. My only concern, and Mr. Lacone, you can correct me if I'm wrong or verify if I'm right. That's what I'd prefer you do. This 1.37 million is part of the capital expenditures. Is that correct?
It's wrapped into the cost of the project, yes.
Whereas if we brought it in-house, it would then go into our operating budget that we would have to fund
Under
each year.
Under payroll,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, I think that's, for me, that's the bigger concern, is having to go and increase, even if it's $300,000 a year for bringing enough folks in-house to work with Mr. Perriman. You know, that puts that in direct competition with textbooks. We like to use that analogy, but that's the competition that we'll set up. All right, do we want to talk about this more at the board meeting or move it on to consent? Okay, we'll vote on it at the next board meeting. All right, continuing on, Battle Creek land transfer.
Actually, before that, we have 335, which is architectural services.
Yeah, we do, don't we? All right,
do.
go ahead.
We do. We met we had an RFQ that went out for architects as well. Earl Swinson chose not to come back with us, and we had looked into some other companies. We had 10 companies submit to us. 9 did it the correct way, so we had 9 to choose for. We reduced that list down to 5. Last Thursday, we met with 5 and interviewed 5 architectural firms over the course of the day. We are recommending to you tonight to award the contract to Klein Sweeney, which is a architectural firm out of Nashville. Our committee met with them, and from the ones that we met with, felt very confident in this company and what they could do for us. We did have the opportunity to tour a school that they built for Williamson County, or they designed for Williamson County last week. And we're very impressed with what we saw in their work. Several of the other builders as well, members of our committee, had been in their buildings. We were actually impressed over the course of the day. We interviewed 5 and knew that 5 could do very good work for you without question. We felt, though, that this was the best fit that we did have moving forward. I will just go ahead and say on the front end, I have spoken to them. We did not ask them over the course of the day about fees. What we did when I contacted, we actually narrowed to 2 from the 5. I contacted them and asked follow-up questions and kind of did a little bit more digging. One of the questions I asked was the fee schedule that they would have, and they do follow the state fee schedule that is outlined by the state government, which is in line with what we've been doing in the past. So it's a set fee for the project. As it costs, then it's a percentage of that project. So it's very much in bounds. And when I talked to the other firm, that was the same answer that I got from them as well. It's a set fee schedule.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lindsay.
I know we're ramping up to build a new school building, but it appears in the memo, so basically that we would be contracted with them for 3 years, any architectural services we need. I mean, just $4 million got approved last night, so there's gonna be, I'm sure somewhere in there's gonna be times where architectural services are needed. So they would be ready to go on any of those projects.
They would be, and we talked to them about the high school, we talked to them about the auxiliary gym at Santa Fe, and we did discuss, as things come up, in part of the RFQ that they had was renovations or expansions that we've done. We've had internal talks that as we see, if this moves forward at the rate that it's moving, let's say for some crazy reason the commission gave us more money next year to do a couple more projects, I think we could very much talk to them if that were out of their capacity bounds or if they had conflicts with other projects. I don't know, does this make them our sole person, or we could go out and speak to others as we need to. However, they are ready for any small projects that would come along as well.
Yeah, we set that up as non-exclusive, that they work for us for a period of time as you choose to engage them. So we wouldn't be obligated to use them for smaller jobs or things like that.
Okay. And that is one thing that we're seeing with these counties that we've talked to around us that are growing at a pretty rapid rate, is that they pretty much have 2. One that's because if you do over time move to that design bid build process, you're always designing something. You never stop. You're always buying land, you're always designing, and so sometimes they have capacity issues with folks that are working in other systems, and they carry 2.
Ms. Irvin.
So I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. I know in talks that we've had in the past, we've talked about things that maybe we would have done different. And what's obviously coming to mind is the Battle Creek schools. Of course, we all think that they're gorgeous. I was very shocked whenever I first become a board member and I get a nice fancy pamphlet in the mail, a vote for school of the year, and they're all these designed masterpieces that are just beautiful to look at. And I'm sitting here flipping and going, well, where's the most functional, cheapest one? That's the one I want to vote for. So I say that to say this. When speaking with these companies, how do they best align with our vision moving forward? As far as things we have talked about in the past, is perhaps maybe considering doing like a, for lack of a better term, like a standard building that we just customize per se. Because what I think our county would be most impressed with, so how did these companies align? And I don't know, because I wasn't here then, perhaps the architects in the past were driven by our vision of wanting it to be a masterpiece, so maybe that's the difference. But at least wanted to ask that question.
So I will say, with the two Battle Creek schools, we got what we asked for. We got what they were directed by central office to build. That's without a question. And they did a good job with what they were told to do. We discussed with all of them and made a couple of things very clear based off of conversation that you've had with us through retreats, through work sessions, through all communications. One, we made very clear to everyone that this is our building and this is our house and we're going to live in it. And we're going to live in it for a long time after you're gone. And we don't care if you get a magazine cover out of it. That's not something that we're interested in. Obviously, we want the aesthetics to be appealing. We want it to be a pretty building. We don't want to build ugly buildings. I'll tell you that one of the comments I made about one of the ones was they made great buildings, and I just said I can't get past the fact that they're ugly. You know, they're great buildings. They're just ugly. I can't deal with it. And we've had real hard conversations about that. So the other thing is with this firm, we went to, and I'll say it was Legacy Middle School, which is the newest middle school in Williamson County. It's on Henpeck Lane. It's very appealing from the outside. It's a very pretty building. But what impressed us when we got out in the building was the flow of the building and the function of the building. And I've said to you before, the eyes of these two that are sitting here are the eyes of a constructioner, of a builder. That's a great word, constructioner, right? Of a builder. It's always great to have a live mic.
You're the educator?
I'm the educator. And the eyes of a school person. And I think that that's of great benefit to both of us because, as I've said to you in the past, we walk buildings and we look at buildings very differently. And that was a conversation that we had when we toured that building. That building is beautiful on the outside, and you get in and it's just plain. Not plain ugly, not plain like you go in and go, oh, but it's a good building. It's a solid building. It flows well. It was laid out well. And in our discussion with them, and I'll defer to Mr. Hickman and today both, they were in the room. In our discussion with this company, that was what they talked about. Without us asking questions, they talked about form and function over beauty. And that really, they were the first firm we heard at 8 o'clock in the morning. We finished at almost 6. So when we went through a whole day's talk, at the end, their conversation with us still shined. And it was very much based on what you're asking about.
Okay. Do we need to have any further discussion or debate, or are we good with consent? We need to vote on this at the meeting? Ms. Parker?
I'd rather us vote on it at the meeting. I really hope people will take the time to look at all these other, companies though. I mean, while I've been sitting here, I've been looking at just some of the things that others have done. And, I mean, not just full buildings, but also renovations to existing buildings and adding on to buildings. And I think those are things that, still to me or potentially could be on the table, if we had the right person to come in and, give us some good direction on some stuff. But I just hope everybody will look at some of the things, that some of these other companies do.
Thank you. Who all sat in on those meetings?
I did, Mr. Hall did, Mr. Hickman, Mr. Hewlett, Mr. Spencer were in those meetings.
Anybody from the board sit in?
They did not.
Would anything prohibit us from using any of these other companies for future projects?
No, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Hickman?
And I sat in too, and it was, good conversations, and one of the reasons we felt that, number one, answered just about all the comments she said, was somebody that had capacity to continue to meet our vision and be able to build be multiple projects at a time if we do so desire for them to be.
Thank you very much. All right, we will, go ahead.
To you and what we said to them, the 5 that we brought in, without a doubt, had proven track records. They can build what we need, in any capacity. And what we said to them was we wanted a relationship with a company that would be possibly beyond this, because we did talk about this building becoming the template building for future buildings, and we talked to them about our plans across grade spans to do that. And that was one thing at the end of the day that this company had, was the comfort level that the folks in the room had. It became a conversation, it became an easy conversation and a flow in which they were very receptive to what we did. And as you say, they're there to sell themselves, but over the course of the day, as you talk to 5, you get a different feel. And that was why this company, based on what we had seen and how we interacted with them, we felt had the best opportunity for us to move forward.
Thank you. We'll vote on this at next month's meeting. Now, Battle Creek land transfer.
So with the Battle Creek land transfer, we brought you this a couple of months ago. You know the history of this, so I won't recount all of it. But the land that was outlined in this is the same land that was outlined in the original agreement with the city of Spring Hill. When this transferred over to the county to do the bridge project, we simply took that outline over to the county land portion. In meeting with you, if you remember the last time we discussed this, we did discuss the road, and the land for the road was added in as well to the transfer. So as you see there, we bring that to you tonight. Mr. Wooliver's had it. We feel it's ready to move forward. I do know there's a question about it, a concern maybe, so we're here to answer any questions. But the land that was outlined specifically in this proposal is the land that was initially talked about with the city of Spring Hill, and as that moved over to the county, it was just carried over.
Okay. Mr. Lindsay.
The question's coming from me on it, but if you might want to pull the map up where we can see. But it was my understanding when there was brainstorming going on about the possible high school at the Battle Creek site. If you look at the area that'll be kind of north and east of the creek, some of that area lies in the floodplain, and I guess that was the original plan, was to give everything that lied in the floodplain back to the county. But with that being said, I also understood there was some talk about that still there would have to be an agreement with the county to use part of that property, possibly for some athletic facilities or something like that. And I think, Mr. Hewlett, you might have been in on some of those talks. So it just seems redundant to me to give property back to the county and then turn around and ask for an agreement to use some portion of that same property. I also don't remember exactly the number of acreage that there was talk about, but in this, it appears that there's 98 acres that would be conveying back to the county. But I'm saying all that to say, I question about why we wouldn't use the creek as our line rather than going on that side of the high school side of the creek. But, and I'm not surprising Mr. Perriman with this. I've already run this by him. So.
And again, the reason the line on the high school side is where it is that was where the original line was drawn in negotiating with the city of Spring Hill. And then when that was moved to the county, the same offer was made of the county. They just took that to complete the project of the bridge. we reached out yesterday to our civil engineers, to our surveyors. They have not gotten back with Mr. Hall yet. We asked two questions: how much land does that involve on that side of the creek? And the second thing is, it has not been pinned yet. That was something we were waiting to do after everybody agreed. We would actually have the pin set at that point. So there's not been anything out there. If you guys wanted us to explore that and come back with the option of moving that line back to the creek, we could do that. We would then have to just engage the county, and have a discussion with the county on, whether they would be willing to accept that or not. I do know that probably the Parks Department is willing to speak to the county and say that they feel that it would be better with us than with them. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I think that's a fair statement to make. So if you wanted us to, we can pull this back. There's nothing that says we have to do it this month, and we can at least bring you the option of how much land that would be in question on the creek side and what it would take for us to pin it differently in the future moving forward if you chose to.
Mr. Moore.
I'd just like to echo that as well. I mean, one of the concerns I know we had talked about originally was making sure that we still had enough property to do what we need for the high school, and it just seems natural to me to have the creek there as the border, and as things tend to go south on things, I would hate for us to get to a position where we're doing the project, we're getting into the high school, we're using property, and we have to come right back to them and say, oh, by the way, we actually are going to need a little more property than we thought we did, and that just, I would rather just kind of hammer that out on the front end, because it just seems to make more sense to not have it crossing over the creek on that side.
So Mr. Hall has a different drawing from the architect than what I'm looking at. He says it's roughly 30 acres right there, and that would entail two things. That is land that we already knew one of the ball fields would probably have to partially at least be on. The other question, you know, that we have at Battle Creek, and probably the worst planned thing that has been done at Battle Creek, is parking. And that would allow us for event parking, especially in that lower area, if that didn't leave. Now, there's nothing to say we still couldn't come to an agreement with the park board on how to use that land. The ball field's one thing, but if we started building parking lots on park board land, that's a different thing. So we're happy to bring this back to you with an alternate form, and then you can choose whichever one. And then just please know, we'll have to go to the commission, and we'll make those reaches. We'll reach out to Mr. Morrow and some other folks on the front end to see if this is even agreeable to them in any way. But we can bring that back next month. We can bring it back at the board meeting, but if you would choose for us to bring it back next work session, that would give us a little more time, and then we could move forward from there.
Just me personally, I don't see that it's any rush. I mean, and to be fair too, I don't want the commission to feel like we're trying to shortchange them this. I'm just trying to stop us from having to get into a back and forth at a later date when people don't maybe remember exactly what we were trying to do here in the first place.
I think that pushing it to the next work session would be fine, and I think when you do address the commission, just let them know we're doing this to provide more planning and forethought, not to stall and delay anything. I think our intention is to make the wisest decision, and that needs to be communicated clearly. All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Going to the acreage question real quickly, so you're giving about 98.21 acres. I think the original estimate when this started with the city of Spring Hill was somewhere between 80 and 85 acres. But I don't necessarily think that included the dirt under the roadway. So that extra 10 acres to get you to about 88 acres, you'll see you're reserving an ingress and egress easement over that part. So there's about 10 acres of roadway property that's included in that. So was that you'd be better off not owning the roadway itself if the county was willing to take that. It's their road, let them deal with the issues associated. So to get to the acreage, you're at about 88 in a practical situation there, 98 including the roadway. The other thing that I'd like some direction from the board, I put this on with a reverter clause. You've done that in the past, meaning that if it stopped being used for public purposes, it would come back to you guys. I'd recommend that you remove that. We've used that in the past on situations where you've given property away because it was not useful to you or there was some other reason, or you sold it for a relatively nominal amount. this one you got a pretty good swap. So my suggestion would be, you may wanna really look at that reverter and maybe pull that out and just deed that over, fee simple, get rid of it.
Okay. And that's something we can take up at the next, work session when we discuss?
Certainly, just kind of food for thought. I put it in there, but, before it goes to the county, you may wanna think about that.
Okay,
Can I
sounds good.
comment on that?
Mr. Lindsay, your light's on.
As far as that reverter clause goes, of course, the discussion out there is that this property would possibly become park property. If it were to become park property and there was ever any grant money taken on that property, one of the requirements for taking those monies is, that there has to be a deed restriction placed upon that property would remain, recreational property for perpetuity. So it would, if that were to ever be the case, that, I guess a judge would figure out whether the reverter clause or that deed restriction, it could be counterproductive anyway, so.
Okay, thank you. We'll take this up next month. All right, moving on. Battle Creek Middle School easement request. Mr. Pearman?
This request, you'll note, is presented by me and Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore asked for this to be placed on there. We do have a contractor, on Malon Moore, who has contacted us with, a request to tie into our sewer line and to our sewer pump station, on the current Battle Creek site. And we've kinda talked about this and bantered about this and gone back and forth with them over the last year, really. And they did reach out, I believe, maybe, Mr. Fulbright, you may have had a opportunity to sit down with them.
Let me jump in here. I did meet, with the two gentlemen. They're actually here with us this evening. This was the email that I referenced Saturday that I finally remembered to send late Sunday night or early Monday morning. And then there was a second one that, followed it. So, you all have been, in receipt of all the information that I've received. Thought it was very thorough, and they're here and willing to answer any questions. Mr. Pearman, I'll turn it back over to you.
That's what I was gonna push and say. I think they're here, so I was gonna turn it over to Mr. Moore for any comment or any of you for questions that you may have for them.
Go ahead, Mr. Moore.
I will keep that part brief. I had two concerns. I know this came to us early on, and there's two things I'd just like to point out on this. One is that, obviously, I would want to make sure anything we do with that property, that we're not, painting ourselves into a corner. And as long as that standard's met, I think it is wise of us to look into, how to be good neighbors, so to speak, with the other property around us. That said, too, I was impressed that this group is interested in pitching in monetarily to, benefit the school system and a known issue we have there, which is the intersection there with Malon Moore and, Battle Creek Way, I guess is what they've called it. So in my opinion, this is something, obviously, there's no action for us to take at this point, but I think that staff should explore this further and see how that a mutually beneficial relationship could take place here, is a good thing for us, how it looks to me, at least for you guys to look into it further and make sure that, everybody comes out on the winning side of this.
Mr. Lindsay.
You guys may have to help me with my ignorance here, but, it appears from one of the emails that the city of Spring Hill is willing or ready to take that, pump station, which would relieve us of that liability, or did I misunderstand that?
So the pump station was supposed to have been turned over to the city of Spring Hill, at the completion of the project, and in all honesty, that fell between my transition, Mr. Breeden, to me, and it didn't happen. They aren't really hurt right now that they don't have it, but they are willing to get into that. That was part of the original agreement. There's been a little bit of issue with the pump station. City of Spring Hill actually has fixed it, and maintained it along the way. It is built to their standards. We started the process of turning that over earlier in the year, and then Spring Hill turned over. Basically, everybody that's in city government at Spring Hill left, and there's a whole new city government. And so we have somewhat not proceeded right now just because we're trying to get good contacts. I did have a conversation last week with the water department as we met at Spring Hill High School about that easement, about the fact that this needed to be turned over. One concern that we do have in this is beyond the pump station. It's the actual line itself. And we have to make sure that, you know, as we move forward, is the sewer line being turned over, or is it just the pump station? Where would that be? Where would a tie-in be? And what would the capacity of that station be? We are questioning, and we do have a question about what the capacity of this station was originally designed to maintain, and we're working right now to find that out. Mr. Holland actually, and he and I talked about that at length today, so we're working through that. But it can, the proposed easement would be that property we were just speaking of that lies in the floodplain just east of the creek. Correct. So that may change your work, that if we grant this easement, then now we would be conveying a piece of property that has an existing easement already on it.
Yeah.
Sounds like you've been tasked to continue to pursue this. I do want to just reiterate that, per the email, that there was a discussion of, you know, the group, us working with them and them being a part of our needs, addressing some of our needs with that turn lane, which is not anything to sneeze at. That's pretty substantial. So as you go forward, I'll go ahead and say, just in general, I'm all for public or private entities helping out, working with public-private partnerships. I think that's a great thing to pursue, and if we have good corporate neighbors and friends, then we need to work well with them. So we will take this, you'll bring this back to us work session?
Hopefully, probably not by the board, hopefully
Work
by
session?
work session, we could
Okay.
meet with them and work through some things, and then also have time to meet with the city of Spring Hill with that, begin the process of turning that over.
Okay. Do you guys have anything in the back that y'all would like to add, or just wave so we know who we're talking to? There you go. All right.
The last thing on there, 338, and this was something we are still working on. I thought I would have this document done by today, and we do not. Ms. Parker and I have been talking about this policy, and we will have this by next month for sure, is facility usage, the way we manage that as far as fees and things like that. We have reached out to a couple of different districts and really talked to them about what they're doing. I have one question that I'm still researching, and once that is done, we are close to having a proposed new policy to you for discussion, and I'll have that by next month. And I apologize, I thought I would have it today, and just with the world turning in the way that it has, it didn't get to you.
Thank you. All right, we'll look forward to that then for our next work session. Moving on to policies.
Good evening. I have 4 policies that are listed on here. Would you like to ask questions on the ones, or would you like for me to go through them?
Board, what do you need? You need to go through them one by one? Okay, Mr. Lindsay has jumped in and would like clarification on the first one. By the first one, do you mean?
Compensation and contracts.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So, in updating our staff handbook and working through some other things, this policy came up, and I've talked with staff, and I've actually talked with Chair Fulbright on this prior. What I'm suggesting right now in the current policy change, the part that deals with the professional personnel, I just changed it to actually mimic the law. It doesn't really change anything. It just mimics the state law. The part that really needed changing was in our administrators. The current policy has our 12-month administrators with 260 days, including 12 holidays. And then our policy states for 11th month, the 227 days, including 11 holidays. So what our handbook had previously said was 238 days for our 11-month administrators. So just purely reading policy, if you get to 238 days, I understand it's the 227 plus 11 equals 238, but you can't do the same thing for the 260, or else they've been working 272 days. So I was just clarifying, moving the 11 month up to the 238, which is what has been in practice here, and so they're actually the 238 with the 11 days for holidays. That's what I've been proposing right now. I put on there as well that when we are doing our salary study, I've already talked with the salary study about looking how our district, especially our, and to clarify, on the professional personnel, I added in the state law for any professional personnel, they have 200 days, then they have 220 if they're an 11-month teacher, and 240 if they're a 12-month teacher, which some of our agricultural teachers are 12 months. So just to include that and make sure that's actually in there and that they're actually getting those 12 holidays that by law they're supposed to have. So sorry, back to the salary study part of it. I would suggest when we look at the salary study, looking back at this policy at that time and seeing how our district compares on our 11th and 12-month employees. A lot of other districts they might have 260-day calendars, but they have more holidays that are included. So that's just something to take into context when we're looking at our salary study. This includes, any 11-month and 12-month employees, your bookkeepers, secretaries, classified and administrative staff. So just something, I think when we're looking at our pay scale, when we see the amount of days that we're working, the amount of pay that we're getting, and also comparing that to other districts. I talked with, initially people, and I've brought that up. I've looked at other districts and different calendars that they have. So that's just for future to look at that. But currently, what's being proposed is like I said, on the professional, it's just mimicking state law. The administrator part is getting that 11 months to what we actually are in practice of doing. And then I just added some headers.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lindsay, do you have any further questions? Is there anything else we need to discuss with this one, or are we good to move it on? Consent? Okay.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
Sorry. I'm just catching up on the part under administrative personnel where you said a minimum of 260 days, including holidays. I thought you said it was 260 plus 12.
That's what I'm saying.
Holidays.
If you were reading it good, so the 11th month and 12th month, they weren't adding up. Like in what our practice has been for our 11-month administrator, there were 238 days. So if you take the 227 plus 11, you get to 238. So either they needed to be 227 or they were 238. But when you look at the 260-day 12-month administrators, they're 260 and includes the 12. So then if you took 260 and 12, it's either 272. If you did 227 and 11, you get to 238. So
Okay.
it just wasn't.
So it's not 272 that they were supposed to be working.
It's 260.
It's 260.
Yeah, it's changing that 11-month administrator to put it into what's actually been in practice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next one.
I will address the sick leave policy. When this originally was brought back up, it was, I believe the board was also copied on that from the TSBA, and it was pushed back to us that we could not receive compensation and give credit. And at the time it was asked, when did this change? So I reached out to TCRS. It took them a while for them to get back to me, but they finally did. And it was explained further, and I've also sent this information to the TSBA, that when the law states they can't be compensated, it means full compensation. Like they couldn't, if you had 200 sick days, you weren't getting paid for the full amount of that. We can pay them the $50 or the $10. So this is changing that language to make it clear that they can still receive that payment when they retire and also get the credit, but they're not, they get the retirement credit and the $50, that portion isn't then reported to TCRS.
Mr. Lindsay.
So nothing is changing from what we've always been doing then?
Correct. I'm just making sure policy actually states that.
Okay, let's, since we've only got two more, if you'll just touch on those two.
Sure. So the COVID leave, this was, I believe, was requested. We've obviously had a lot of staff out due to COVID this year. As last year, we had the government that had the FFCRA, where you had the COVID leave that was for them that was mandatory through the end of last year, and then our district carried it on through part of this beginning of this calendar year. So this would be giving 10 COVID days to our staff for this school year.
Okay. Any further discussion on this policy? All right, moving on. You'll touch on the next one?
Yes, sir. The alternative school programs, this was one of the ones that TSBA came out with that needed recommendations. So I worked with Mr. Ritchie on this one in Pupil Services, and we took the recommendations from TSBA, added it in, and also wanted to make clear that our alternative is a program and not a school, because that's a distinction in the law.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no further discussion, I think that takes care of them. Are these all good to go on consent? Okay, we'll do that then. Anything else you need to bring up, or are we good?
I have something further down if you want to move it up now. I have the substitutes program, but it's a little bit further down on the agenda.
I think these others will go pretty quick. I hate to make folks sit longer than they have to, but let's just roll through these next ones as quick as we can. Mr. Gaines, back to you.
The next item is you have an agenda packet for the 5th grade Chromebooks. We're proposing to purchase those with ESSER II funds.
Okay, any discussion on this purchase? Consent? Okay, next.
The next one to be the same thing. We had growth devices. We experienced some growth, so we're using ESSER II funds to purchase those additional devices.
Consent? All right, consent.
The Imagine Learning is a Title III. Did it remain a Title III purchase, Mr. Endura? Yeah, but it's still right now a Title III purchase, right? Yes. The Title III purchase for software program for EL students.
Okay. Consent? Okay. Next.
I skipped one.
That's what I was getting ready to call your attention to. I thought we skipped one.
Yeah. So you see there the also bid 22016 for teacher devices.
Correct.
Also too.
Consent. All right, we're good.
So if I understand 4.15, this is not on consent. It is on hold till this is the virtual streaming program, virtual streaming teachers that'll go with the classroom coordinator.
Yeah, this is going to be discussed at the full board meeting.
Okay.
I thought that's what we had put it to the full board meeting to see where we stood as far as the hiring process needs go. Yeah.
The budget amendment is underneath it to move the money. We intend to pay for the Elevate program with money that's in the teacher line because we haven't hired those teachers. So that's what the budget amendment is about. But if you, Mr. Chairman, if you're waiting to approve that budget amendment until the meeting, then we won't be able to do the purchase unless we have the funds.
No, we talked about doing it at the next board meeting on the 12th. Yeah. Yeah. Right. All right, so that's where we stand with that one. Now, back to the substitutes.
Okay, so I did go ahead and print off. Everyone should have a packet in front of you. Just in case technology wasn't working, it may or may not be. Let's see. So, as we all know, we have staffing shortages, and that doesn't run short to our substitute staffing as well. So, as we can see, currently, we have around 80-ish substitutes. That does include our designated subs. It's about 17 of those at our schools, and the subs that are picking up, our substitutes who are actively picking up jobs. These numbers were of last week. We had a little over 3,000 where we needed a substitute, a little over 1,000 filling the absences with an average fill rate of about 34% this year. You can see last year we had about the same number of substitute teachers, about 12,500 that needed, around 5,000 was what we're filling, and so last year we had an average fill rate of 41%. As we all have seen, that the lack of substitutes, we've had to combine classes, we've had teachers that have had to cover classes, we have less effective teaching days that are impacting our students and their learning growth. I believe we see then it's lowered our teacher morale as well, and just a daily frustration from administration and staff personnel of just trying to fill our open substitute positions. I've talked with a couple different companies. ESS is the company that I'm proposing that the board go with. They're actually here with us in the back, Matt and Wendy. We've met with them on a couple of times, and I've actually met with them with the finance department as well. They are, as it says here, the nation's largest education exclusive provider. They've partnered with over 800 districts. They have 12 districts here in Tennessee. I have talked with a district that uses them, and they did recommend. Here are their 12 partnerships that they have here in Tennessee, as well as the national partnerships that they have. Oh, I went quickly. For our students, what more substitutes would mean, we don't have to combine our classes, so it helps in overcrowding, help with hopefully not spreading COVID. Then we wouldn't actually have to split the classrooms. In our middle and our younger grades in elementary, if you have a teacher that doesn't show up, they would take that classroom and split it amongst different teachers in that grade band, which could maybe cause confusion and inconsistency for our students in those classrooms. We have teachers who are, like we said, using their planning periods, so this would give teachers back their planning period, so hopefully their class instruction would improve. They would have, office hours of students in higher grades that would need to speak to them. And our administration can get back to focusing on instructional learning in the classroom rather than trying to cover classes, and greater supervision of our students in classroom management. And I say that because ESS also provides training for our substitutes that focus on student achievement. They have live training for all new substitutes. The substitutes must pass a training to be hired. Their training curriculum is customized to our needs. They have online training modules as well. Some of the topics that they cover: professional teaching behavior, classroom management, student and staff safety, creative instructional strategies, school policies, and digital platforms for virtual learning. What it would be a benefit for our current substitutes is currently our substitutes can only work 17 days a month. That keeps them as part-time, and they're paid, before recently they had been paid once a month, but now they are going to biweekly. But going with ESS was actually what allow our substitutes to be paid weekly from the company. They would be able to be a full-time with the company if they wanted to, so then they could actually qualify for benefits such as health and vision and dental. This company offers them incentives. They have a referral program where they get $75 per each referral that they get. They have an employee discount program, and they have support for their substitutes that they provide. What it would mean for the district and the district staff, we would not see our secretaries and administrators needing to make early morning phone calls or late night phone calls or Sunday afternoon phone calls to cover for those classes. They'd be managing the sign-in and sign-out of our substitutes, managing the attendance software, processing our payroll, which would relieve Doug's office from those things as well. These employees would be employees of ESS, so it would take over some of that as far as handling incidents and personnel issues. They would interview the substitutes, do all the basic paperwork. As well, they would be recruiting for us. These are some of the different ways that they can recruit. They've had digital, traditional, like we've already mentioned, the referral program. District activities show up with banners. They place signs and car rider lines. That way that they would know, get involved in some of like the churches and community programs to try to recruit more individuals for us. As far as the pricing goes, there is a 30% out markup, so what our current rate is you can see here, $100, so their bill rate would be $130. And then you can see the other rates there for you. This does include them assuming all of our payroll tax and insurance that we are currently paying on the subs. So last year, our substitute teacher payroll, you can see, $554,731, and some of that actually also includes some of our teacher, sub-teacher, so that we wouldn't have to be paying for that anymore. The FICA Medicare would go away. The Ready Sub software that we've paid for, we wouldn't have to renew that and go with them anymore. It would take that off of us. Any of our pre-employment screenings would go away. Time, just sheer time that's spent in-house calling our subs would go away. They'll provide, like I said, the benefits to our subs. Our subs could be full-time with them. They'll provide better recruiting, because what they're also going to do is they provide a full-time person, somebody that's from Murray County that they'll provide to our district that's solely focused on getting subs for our classrooms and for our students and getting them trained in there. They have, Matt's the one I've been working with, and then Wendy's here in Nashville. So we have local support that we'd have from this company, as well as we'd have the on-site person here in our county that would be working to fill these spots. They have reporting that they can give us. They'd have a principal communication plan, monthly and quarterly progress reports, and upcoming recruitment opportunities. The packet that I have has a 4-week timeline. I've talked with Matt, and it's possible that we might actually be able to get that in 3 weeks once it's approved, so we can get going on this and hopefully get some relief for our students and teachers. And then this is just a basic overview of everything we've talked about. So if you guys have questions for me, if you have questions for them, like I said, Matt and Wendy are here.
My question would be, I don't even know who would have been, I guess some of the board members would have been here. Did we not do something like this in the past, and why did we get away from it? Okay. All right. I mean, I think it's a good program. I just was curious what the experience was. Ms. Irvin?
So forgive me, I wasn't in this district working at that time, but I do stay well in touch with the network of teachers and such. And my remembrance from an outsider looking in, and I'm hoping, and I don't even know that it was this program. It could have been a totally different program, but from the program we're referencing, it did not go well at all.
It was not this
program.
Yes, and
because what I remember hearing, and this is something I'd like to hear from them, is that I know a lot of times people who sign up to be substitute teachers, they are people who maybe are mothers of children that attend a school, and they want to be designated to a certain school so that they can correlate their time.
Sure.
And from my remembrance, which is probably very flawed, of the time of the past, is that they pretty much had to be available to go to any school in our district. So I'd want to see how that was handled, because from my remembrance, and like I say, it wasn't them, but I think we lost people because of that, because they're like, if I'm going to have to go wherever and report so many days, then forget it. So that's a fear of mine. Another concern is looking at the counties. There's no counties that I see touching that is in this program. So I don't know how they're going to get more employees doing this than we are currently, unless it's just simply adding that extra day in, which would go, people would then be able to do the 5th day. Perhaps that would help some. The 30% markup, I have a question. Does that 30% markup include our employment taxes?
yes.
It does include our employment taxes. Okay, that's good to know. I guess that's my main question would be, would people be allowed to designate a school? Because I think if they cannot do that, I think we will lose staff, so, or at least substitutes.
Okay.
I mean, she doesn't have to answer. I mean, whatever. If you want to talk and find out and let us know at the next time, or if they want to address that.
Yeah. If y'all don't mind coming up and just give us a little answer to that.
Good evening, board members. My name is
Good
Matt
evening.
Strong.
Thank you for being here.
I'm from Chattanooga. This is Wendy Beam. She's our regional VP. She's out of the Nashville area. And I'll let her address your questions. They're more
Sure.
operational in nature.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's critical that the subs get to go to the school that they wanna go to.
Okay, good.
Obviously, we also want them to consider others, but it's not a requirement.
Okay,
Our task would be, how do we expand the sub pool so
Right.
that those individuals don't have to go to schools that they don't want to?
right.
And that's really what our strategy is that local recruiting to expand and build that pool. And I know concern with the, surrounding counties, our model, whenever we come into a new district, I mean, we don't really wanna borrow from another district anyway.
Mhm.
We want to recruit locally, and I think probably one of our techniques that works the best is you guys are already working hard to find your current subs. If I were folks who have never considered subbing before, and we let them know, we've got a training program that can kind of give you a new career, can give you maybe something you've never thought of before. So we're kind of trying to go after people that have never considered that before. And as Jennifer mentioned, we've got a great online training program. We've got a great 2 to 3 hour in-person training program. And we consistently have people come out of those programs and say, okay, I feel prepared, and I've even subbed before, and I've never been prepared and trained like this.
Sure.
So we feel very good that, you know, we can find those people, and we can teach you how to be a good sub, have strategies. And then one thing that our on-site managers do that I also think is very unique is especially if it's a brand-new person who's never been in a classroom before, that first day is critical. So we do what we call new hire care. So that first time they take a job, we contact that person and find out, how did it go? You know, were you able to use our strategies that we taught you? Are you in the right place? Maybe we need to go from elementary to middle. Maybe that's your better. So those are some of the things we do because we work really hard to find that sub. We want to make sure it's not just a one and done. How do we keep them coming back and, you know, find the right place for them? So I think that maybe
Sure.
is
No,
more
and
than
thank you
needed.
for answering. I didn't mean to seem like Miss Negative here,
No,
'cause
no, no.
I don't mean that way. And I do think a lot of subs, they do feel intimidated. So I think the educational factor could be significant too. Thank
Yes,
you.
it does.
Mr. Sims?
From y'all's previous, coming into new counties,
Yep.
what type of success rates have y'all moved them to? So we're at 34% currently. Are we looking at moving to 90%? Or, I mean, what's a realistic number?
I would have said yes, pre-COVID. Now, obviously, we're as challenged as everybody else, trying to find people who feel comfortable coming into classrooms, feel safe, you know, are ready to, but like consistently, our 12 that we currently have in Tennessee, we're at about 70% fill rate today. Pre-COVID, those were 90 and 95. Now, I won't tell you we're gonna get to that in 1 month. It's gonna take a build, but we should expect to see steady, like, you know, 10% improvement each month because we're building that pool quickly. So.
Okay. Mr. Hale?
That was one of my questions, was fill rate. I know before, when we used Parallel, we had a guaranteed fill rate of, I don't know, 85% or something like that. So we don't have a guarantee, we just, a promise that we're gonna.
Right,
Okay.
and our strategy is more, we're not billing if we don't fill. So that kind of, it's a built-in motivation anyway, that, we need to cover our cost. So, you know, if we're filling at a 70%, we're not only not pleasing you, but we're also not where we need to be business-wise. So we're very motivated. We have metrics in place. I mean, our goal is still 95% even during COVID. We have weekly operational meetings with all of our districts, and everybody's reporting out. So we are measuring ourselves to, we do want to get to 95% with these districts. So our on-site manager knows what she's trying to, you know, if you have 80 absences a day, she knows she's got to fill 75. That's her goal every day.
Okay.
can I jump in real quick and tie something you just said to what Marlena said? Right there explains why there would have been a requirement to go to a school even though you didn't want to, because there's a requirement on this end.
Right.
That just clicked in my brain. Thank you. Go ahead, Chad.
I was just gonna say that too, but anyway, I'll go to the next thing. And we don't have any issues with dual employment. So let's say we have a bus driver who also wants to sub. Currently, we can't do that. So there should not be an issue with that
That's
either.
right.
Okay.
It's like somebody going down the street to work at Walmart who also works for you, two separate employers.
Absolutely, good deal.
Yep.
And then the last thing, this is kind of, I thought about this because the way your strategy works, if you're going out and getting people who have never considered subbing or teaching as, we're starting to grow your own program, and so that might actually kind of, you know, you may reach somebody who has never thought about teaching, they get their feet wet, and then they're like, so this could be an avenue to help us recruit possibly. I hate to take away from you, but.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. That's perfect, because that's really one way that we look at, as we grow our own subs, we want the district to pull. Now, if you're gonna pull 15 a month, we're gonna call timeout, but if you're pulling, that's great recruiting
make no
for
promises.
us.
But no, thanks.
So that's fine. We want that to happen. You know, the whole purpose is making sure the classrooms are covered and with quality, you know, instructors. So if you pull some, that works nicely. Like I say, it helps our recruiting efforts, because then we're able to say,
it looks good, right?
If you'll come try the schools, find where you want to be. Maybe you really are an educator and you just never knew that. And then if y'all have, you know, tutoring and helpful programs that you can pull them into, it's a great stepping stone for their career.
So it sounds like a partnership. Thank you.
Yes, yep.
Ms. Kinzer.
I just have a couple of questions. I come from the reality of living through a substitute program many, many years ago. As a teacher, and when they implemented it, all the teacher had to do was just call and leave a message. There wasn't anybody, a principal on the other end saying, are you sure you can't come in today? You know, it was so easy. Okay, too easy. So what happened was way more people, you know, taking their sick days, all that. And then the other thing that happened is we never knew who was going to come to our classroom. We didn't have any contact with them. I now know with COVID and everything, we absolutely need a program like this. I certainly support this, but I also want you to take me through. I'm the teacher. I'm calling this number. I'm not going to be there today. How do you inform the office? I mean, take me through what you do.
Okay. I know y'all have a different program as far as Ready Sub than we do, so I may be saying things that Ready Sub doesn't do, but I'll share with you.
I just want to know what you do. I know what they do.
Okay. So, you know, you're right. Your teachers can request an absence as much as they want, but you may have your own HR protocols on who can request that absence or not, but typically they put that into a system, their request. So it's an online system that once we've vetted the sub and put them into the system, it gives them permission to see those absences. So if they pick up an absence, our system emails the teacher, so-and-so has picked up your absence and will be at your school tomorrow. I'm not aware if Ready Sub does that or not, but we, yes.
Doug, go ahead.
I think David Moore shut my light off. Oh, no, he didn't.
He's bad about that.
Isn't he? Yeah. Yes, ReadySub does do this, and that is the software we're going to use through at least June 30th of 2022 in cohesion with ESS if you all decide to vote for this and move forward with this. But it's the one portal for teachers to go to not only submit their time off request and not have to go anywhere else, but also request the sub. And they can set priority levels on which sub they'd like to request. They can rate subs. It contacts the sub via their preferred method. So when the sub sets up their profile, if they say a phone call is their preferred method, that's the method it tries to contact them first. Also, if subs have not been requested for a job, they can get on the portal and see what jobs are being requested for and take that job at that point in time. Text messages, there's literally every way to take a job through ReadySub, and it's a one-point portal. So we're going active, live with Kronos for the food service team starting Monday. So that's exciting, and, you know, next is instruction and everything right after fall break and moving forward with that. So that is something that was kind of an add-on, you know, that kind of came out of nowhere, was ESS, and we were like, well, this needs to work with ReadySub, or a teacher is going to have to go to their software and Kronos to submit a time off request and a sub request, 2 places rather than 1, but we're able to keep 1 place, even working with ESS regardless. So it's 1 spot to submit a time off request and request a sub.
Okay, the only thing I have to say is the reason Parallel didn't work is because there were so many more teacher requests for subs, and it cost us a great deal of money. The other one didn't work for that same reason as well. So I know we need this, and I want it to work, but we need to keep that in mind.
Okay.
Having lived through the Parallel experience, and I think it was good, but we had a lot of problems at that time on the finance side. So I guess I just wanted, it was more so accounting for where subs went, if it hits different budgets, federal budgets, sped budgets, instruction budgets. So my question is, how have we worked together to try to avoid those problems going forward?
So I set up a meeting, multiple meetings that we've already been in and finished with ReadySub and ESS, and how we would track on the invoice. That was a big concern last time, and Shifra brought it up in the meeting, is that we need to be able to have information sent. Well, I give credit where credit's due. So, you know, we know that there are PD days for SPED federal programs, and those specific subs need to be coded to their budgets. And we're working with ESS to make sure those are tracked. When we get an invoice, not only will we have their invoice and have a list of the subs and the days and where they should be, we can also compare it to ReadySub, see who took that, send a report to SPED and federal programs. We do that currently now manually in Excel. It's a little nastier, but we still do it and correct the GLs as we go if there's anyone that was paid out of an incorrect one. There's one here and there every once in a while. But at the end of the day, we have the correct GL being charged for the sub that took that class for that particular reason.
Hey, I was going to let everybody know that there's a fiber issue in Columbia. The internet's out. We had some issues earlier, but this purchase is for the off-premise filtering. I'm sure you guys are all aware of the shenanigans that have been going on. This is anybody that leaves our network. We're filtered on our network, and when they leave, it's actually tied to the device to filter as much as we can. It's impossible to get everything, but that's what this purchase will be for.
Mr. Fulbright, Chair Fulbright. Yeah, go ahead. And there is one thing I need to cover. For the TSBA conference, Shirley wanted me to remind everyone, if you're going, please let her know.
let's go ahead and start gathering back together. We'll call our special called meeting back to order. You all were emailed a copy of an employee grievance that was filed and appealed to the board. So we are going to take action on that, or we are going to make some decisions on that this evening. We have, and I clarified all this with Mr. Woolver right before the meeting, right before this meeting. We have primarily 4 options to pursue this evening. The 4 options is that we can take no action on the appeal to the board that was made. Number 1. Yeah, we can adopt, do we have to adopt an agenda? Okay. Okay, we have an agenda. Adopt the agenda. Second by Mr. Sims. All those in favor say aye. Okay, sorry, I'll now proceed. Thank you for keeping us straight there. Our 4 options to consider, like I've already said, 1 is to take no action. 2 is to vote to accept the director's findings of the investigation that was conducted. 3rd option would be vote to remand this back to the staff for further investigation. 4th option would be to vote to hold our own hearing on any of the issues that were brought up. I will, at this time, entertain a motion, and just for clarification, if no motion is made, that equals no action to be taken. I see a lot of heads down, and I do not see a motion. So with no motion being made, and this being the only item on our agenda, would it be correct for us at this point to say that we are adjourned? We're adjourned.